Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's Expert Chat. We're going to be talking about assistive technology for kids with dyslexia and dysgraphia. My name is Andrew Lee, and I'm part of the Understood team. And I'm really happy to have with us here today our very own assistive technology expert, Jamie Martin. Hi, Jamie.
Hey, good afternoon, Andrew, and good afternoon to everybody tuning in today.
Awesome. Jamie, can you tell our parents a little bit about your background with assistive technology so they can have a better understanding of your expertise and skills and knowledge base?
Yep, absolutely. So currently, Andrew, I am a assistive technology specialist at the New England Assistive Technology Center, and we're based in Hartford, Connecticut. We go by the acronym NEAT instead of the mouthful of New England Assistive Technology. We do all kinds of things to help parents and schools with assistive technology. So we train students and teachers, we do evals and consults, all kinds of cool AT stuff like that. Before I joined the team here at NEAT, I was an independent AT consultant where I traveled around the country, did a lot of the same kinds of things, really trying to bring AT awareness to the masses, to everybody across the country. But I also spent some time before that working at a school, specifically for students with dyslexia. And I have an Orton Gillingham background as well, so lots of experience with both the remediation side and the accommodation side with the assistive technology. One quick thing, Andrew, it's kind of a gloomy day here in Hartford. I don't know about you guys in the city, so I wanted to start off before we start answering people's questions with a couple of technology jokes. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's totally great. Go ahead.
All right, so first one, what do computers eat for a snack?
What?
Microchips.
That's a good one.
I hear everybody guffawing out in the audience. And the second one is, what computer sings the best?
I don't know. Which one?
Adele.
Those are corny, but I love them.
Yeah, corny. That's it. All right, go ahead.
Awesome. So just to remind parents out there, we're talking about assistive technology for dyslexia and dysgraphia, so reading and writing issues, many language-based issues. If you are out there and I see some questions coming in and you want to ask a question, please do so. It's super helpful to Jamie when he gives answers if you give the age of your child as well as the issues that they may be struggling with, very specific, and Jamie can give a very pointed answer. You can share your name, but you don't have to. You can ask anonymously. We're going to try to get to every single question, but I just want to give a heads up that these chats only go for about 30 minutes, so if we don't get to every single one, you can continue the conversation in u.org/community. So with that said, I see a bunch of questions already come in. I do want to talk to Jamie a little bit about some new developments in assistive technology. Jamie, what are sort of some of the new things that you mentioned that are happening right now that people parents whose kids have these learning issues should know about?
Yeah, so there's actually two things I want to highlight for folks, and they're actually additions. They're new features, new functionality, and tools that parents may already be familiar with. So the first one is Co-Writer. Co-Writer is a very good word prediction tool. And the company who makes Co-Writer, Don Johnston, has actually added a new technology just this past September, a couple months ago, and they're calling it Neuron Word Prediction. And basically what it's doing is using artificial intelligence to make the word prediction a little more accurate than usual. So what it does is automatically it will analyze your child's writing as they are writing it, identify the topic that your child is writing about, and then make the word prediction topic specific to that topic that's being written about. So previously there was a feature in Co-Writer called topic dictionaries, but you would have to turn those on automatically. You would have to create specific ones based on the topic you're writing about. Now we can kind of bypass that step because Co-Writer will automatically detect the topic you're writing about and then start predicting or suggesting words and phrases having to do with that particular topic. So that's the first one. Second one is a new feature in Read and Write for Google Chrome. So Read and Write for Google Chrome is a very popular literacy tool for Chromebook users and Chrome users. If your child's in a Google school, you might be familiar with Read and Write for Google Chrome. And they just added a contextual spell and grammar checker to that tool. They're calling it Check It. And you'll see the icon is a little check mark, probably all the way to the left on the other side of the word prediction tool. And what that will do is it's an advanced spell and grammar checker, and it will analyze your child's writing. It'll look at entire sentences at a time, and it should pick up on things like confusable words or homonym errors like two, and two. Something that a normal spell checker in something like Google Docs wouldn't normally pick up on. So I think people who have watched these chats for a while know that I'm a big fan of contextual spell and grammar checkers. I've talked about other tools like Ginger and Grammarly. Got It is another one. Dyslexia Keyboard is a very good one as well. But now you can do that right within Read and Write for Google Chrome because it's a brand new feature that I think people need to know about.
Awesome. And so for you parents who have been there and already, your kids are already using some of these technologies, that co-writer update and the Read and Write update, hopefully you guys can use that knowledge. And if you're just starting out, don't get too intimidated. Please do ask those questions. Jamie's also going to be giving some basic information, but so definitely there are a lot of tools out there and lots of things, even for if you just don't even know anything about assistive technology. So let's, Jamie, let's start with our first question. This is from Amy. She has a fourth grade son with severe dysgraphia, ADHD, and anxiety too. Hates to use technology unless everyone else is using it. Any thoughts on helping this fourth grade son use the help that he's being offered?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Amy, for your question. It's actually a very common concern among parents and educators as well. It's that whole stigma piece where kids are feeling uncomfortable using something that's different than the other kids in the class. The good news, Amy, and for anybody else who has a child like Amy's child, is that a lot of tools that can help kids with dysgraphia or dyslexia are available across many different platforms. So in this particular case, for a child with dysgraphia, oftentimes a dictation tool will work very well. So they can bypass the writing by hand. They can just speak their words and they'll be transcribed into text. Oftentimes a word prediction tool might be helpful for dysgraphia. Word prediction, you're still keyboarding. You're still typing either with a physical keyboard or an on-screen keyboard. But there are suggestions that come up on the screen, kind of like that co-writer, which I was talking about earlier. That way there's less keystrokes involved. So if it's a motor issue with the dysgraphia, they can type less characters and still have that accommodation where they can type in a more efficient manner with the word prediction tool. And again, these are available across lots of different platforms. So, Amy, if your child is using an iPad or is comfortable using an iPad and everybody else in the class is using an iPad, there is built-in dictation. There is built-in word prediction right there on the iPad. If your son or daughter is using a Chromebook, in Google Docs, there's built-in dictation. Co-writer is also available for the Chrome web browser. So if your child's using a Chromebook, he or she can use co-writer on that platform, that device. So I think, these days it's a lot easier to kind of get around that stigma piece because a lot of these tools are available no matter what device everybody else in the class is using. So definitely, check out some of the resources that we have and understood in terms of finding whatever platform your child is using. And then you can find some articles that we have online on the website on understood.org where you can match up some of those tools to that platform that your child is using.
Awesome answer, Jamie. Now the next question is from 88. 88 has, I guess this is a coincidence, or an 8-year-old son with ADHD and autism spectrum. And 88's question is, most of the technology is on laptops, tablets with internet connections. 88's wondering, how do you prevent a child from getting distracted when using some of these devices that have an easy way to click on a browser and watch YouTube or check out something? Is there a way to stop to make sure they're used for the right purposes?
Yeah, a great question, 88. And I was actually just talking about this about 15 minutes ago to my director, Nicole, here at the Knee Center, talking about kids with attentional issues and maybe autism where they get distracted using some of these technology tools. And again, a lot of these platforms have tools built into them to help you kind of control that and keep kids on task. Probably one of the best tools that I've seen is on iOS, which is the operating system for iPad and iPhone and iPod Touch, if you're still using one of those. And it's a tool, it's a feature called guided access. And you're going to find guided access in the settings under accessibility. So under the accessibility settings in iOS, there's a feature called guided access. And it will allow you to do a number of things. So if your child is reading a book, or listening to an audiobook with maybe Learning Ally, or reading a book in Voice Dream Reader or something like that, you can set it up so that they are locked into that app and they can't leave without the passcode. Obviously, you're not going to tell them the passcode, and then they don't have that opportunity to go off and watch a YouTube video or find something else distracting on the internet, something like that. You can also disable certain parts of an app. So if you want to keep them in a particular book inside the iBooks app, you can disable the back button that takes you back to the library so that they have to read their school book and not something like Captain Underpants that they might be more interested in. They might be reading Captain Underpants for school, I don't know. But it'll allow you to have a lot more control over what your child is doing on the iPad. And then for other platforms, there are other tools as well. On a Chromebook and on desktop computers. You just have to do a little research to find out some more details about those. But there are definitely those built-in tools that you can use to keep your kids focused, because that is a real concern for kids with attentional issues, and something that we often have to deal with before we can even get them using the AT tools in the most efficient manner.
Great. So there are those tools to sort of limit what they're using so we can keep them focused on schoolwork, whatever they need to do. Next question is from Dina, and I just compliment the parents out there. Great to include those ages in the specific issues because it really helps Jamie when he's giving these answers. This is from Dina. Dina has a 12-year-old with dysgraphia. Dina has a tough issue, having difficulty getting teachers to understand that her son isn't lazy when he's using a laptop and he's not, copying notes or writing long essays. And her son feels like standing out a little bit. Any tips, Jamie, for helping parents work with teachers to help them understand that these assistive technology tools are sort of needed and not, something like being lazy or something like that?
Yeah, and that's, that kind of goes to a lot of, it speaks to a lot of misconceptions about assistive technology. Kids using AT are lazy is one common myth. Kids not wanting to, or kids cheating, if they're cheating using assistive technology because all the other kids aren't using it. I did put together a video, maybe we can put the link to it up in the chat box, with Understood last fall, kind of addressing these common myths about assistive technology. So that actually might be a really good place to start when you're talking to your child's teacher. Send them the link, maybe in your next PPT meeting, get that up on the screen and watch it all together. That might be a good way to start a discussion about that. But by no means, Dina, is your child going to be lazy or be considered cheating if they're using assistive technology that they really need. A lot of it too has to do with awareness, and teachers just not understanding that what the assistive technology is, how it can help certain kids in their class. A lot of teachers are unaware of a teaching approach called Universal Design for Learning, which is all about giving kids different choices to learn information and to share that information that they learn with their teachers. So that's another kind of talking point that you might want to bring up with your child's support team at school to kind of get around this idea of using assistive technology because they really need it. I mean, really, Andrew, what it comes down to is we want our kids to be independent in their use of assistive technology, or the AT tools are going to make them more independent. And if we keep that in mind as the ultimate goal, I think that can help out too. Back in the day when I was doing the Orton Gillingham language remediation, But back before a lot of this AT was really developed, the main accommodation for our dyslexic students was a reader and scribe. So when they had to take a test or they had to do a worksheet, something like that, they would have a human being sitting next to them reading everything out loud and then writing down what they said. But that's not really, that could be a useful accommodation for kids who really need it, but it's not making them independent students. And when we think about preparing students for college and life after school, we really want them to be as independent as they possibly can be, and assistive technology is a huge piece of that. So check out those resources, Dina. Hopefully that'll help you start a discussion with your child's school and his or her support team.
Great. Definitely a great answer. JT, I see your question about preschoolers with early signs. I feel like that's not quite an assistive technology question. If you want to ask it, just give a little bit more detail because it's a little bit too general, I think, for Jamie. Kelly, this is a great question. I'm going to ask it of Jamie, but we're also going to paste in advice on this topic from Sheldon Horowitz about handwriting interventions versus assistive technology. But I will read the question of Jamie just to get his take. Kelly's asking, her child is in 6th grade, just now being diagnosed with dysgraphia. Jamie, do you recommend handwriting intervention at this age or just technology? The article we pasted is from Sheldon, who says you should use both. But Jamie, I don't know what your thoughts on that are.
Sheldon stole my answer because I would say both too.
Okay.
Yeah, so definitely check out that piece. Really, Kelly, what it comes down to is you have to look at, and your child's teachers have to look at the specific academic task that's being asked of your child. If it's an exercise where the teacher is trying to improve the writing skills, then you might want to have some handwriting, but have some kind of a low-tech AT pieces put in there, like a pencil grip on a writing utensil to make the writing grip a little more comfortable, or a slant board to change the angle, which might make the handwriting a little more legible, more comfortable for that child to write. So you definitely use those low-tech tools while you're doing that kind of mechanical handwriting exercise. If the goal of the academic task is to find out what that child knows about a certain topic, and the mechanics of actually writing by hand are going to get in the way of finding out what's in that child's mind, then you might want to use some assistive technology tools like dictation or word prediction. So really, I would definitely do a combination of both, especially if your child is in 6th grade. They might still be working with an occupational therapist, something like that, to try to improve those motor skills. But introduce some of those AT tools as well, because eventually, as the volume of writing gets bigger, and the expectations increase in terms of writing, you're probably going to need to introduce some of those AT tools also.
Great, yeah. So not an either or. Here's a question from Mom One. She's asking you, Jamie, about any insight on program inspiration, which things means brainstorming and creating a visual mind mapping for a student in 6th grade. What's your mind mapping technology for kids in 6th grade? Yes.
Thank you for asking that question, Mom One, because inspiration is one of my very favorite assistive technology tools. It can be used in the writing process, particularly for kids who can visualize their ideas much better than just think about them in terms of words. So when you're organizing a piece of writing, a lot of kids find it easier to create a mind map visually. When I was in school, it was on a piece of paper. We have like blank bubbles on it where we have to fill in the bubbles. Main idea in the middle, ideas out towards the outside. The great thing about electronic graphic organizers like Inspiration, which Mom One mentioned, is that it really makes that process a little more efficient, actually a lot more efficient. So once kids organize ideas visually in a mind map, all they need to do is tap on one button on the iPad or click on one button if it's the desktop version of the software, and it will flip the screen around and show you that linear traditional outline. And then you can export that outline out to a word processor, something like Word or Google Docs. So when I was in school, you would have to redo every step of the writing process. With something like Inspiration, you don't. Each step builds on the last, and you don't have to redo all that work. So, kids with dyslexia and dysgraphia, the last thing we want to do is make the writing process more difficult than it needs to be. And we don't want to have them redo multiple steps of the writing process because it's already difficult for them. So inspiration absolutely is a fantastic option for that kind of thing. But also keep in mind, Mom 1 and everyone else who's watching, that you can use those mind maps, such as inspiration, to do other things besides just writing. So you can use them for reading comprehension. You can organize ideas from a novel or a short story very visually in a mind map. You can also use them for visual note-taking, rather than starting with a blank slate, and kind of try to have to do it on paper in a more formal outline. Inspiration also has many templates built right in there. So there are reading comprehension templates. There are note-taking templates. There are writing templates as well. So they have to start from scratch with a empty canvas. They can just start with a template and start filling in the different pieces that are involved. So thanks, Mom 1, for bringing that up because you gave me a chance to talk about one of my favorite tools.
Awesome. And I do want to mention that we also have some just paper versions of sort of mind maps on the site. We'll paste those in the chat, so you can look at those as well. Here's a question from Stampin' Tulip. I love that name, Stampin' Tulip. Stampin' Tulip needs help. I think her child needs help with digital annotation when teachers expect 2 comments per page. I'm thinking this is probably middle or high school, and not clear the technology, but it's an interesting question. Jamie, any thoughts about this, or do we need more information from Stampin'? What do you think?
So digital annotation meaning
sounds like
a reading and finding like main ideas and things like that.
Sounds like they need to add 2 comments or notes for each page they're reading.
Okay, so there are several tools, Stampin' Tulip, that you can explore that provide annotation tools. At the beginning, I talked a little bit about Read and Write for Google Chrome, which is a very common tool that's being used in schools today because so many kids are using Google Apps and Chromebooks. Read and Write for Google Chrome, in addition to having tools like dictation and word prediction and text-to-speech, also has a number of highlighting tools. So instead of using a marker, a highlighter tool marker, which you would use for a worksheet or a handout or a hard copy book, you can use these digital highlighters in Read and Write to highlight things like main ideas and supporting details. Also has in Google, if you're using it in Google Docs, you can annotate by voice, so that has voice notes that you can take notes with. There's also a vocabulary feature, which is pretty cool in Read and Write for Google Chrome. So if you take those highlighter tools and highlight specific vocab words that your child needs to learn, you can just click on one button, and it'll export all those highlighted words out to a Google Doc, put them in a nice table for you, include definitions, supporting images. It does a really nice job in terms of note-taking for vocabulary as well. On the iPad, if we switch over to a different platform, there are a number of different apps you can use for annotating. Really great one is called Voice Dream Reader, which, by the way, syncs up to kids' Bookshare accounts. So if you have a child with dyslexia who qualifies for Bookshare, you can sync up the Bookshare account right to Voice Dream Reader, download the books, and then use text-to-speech to read it out loud. But there's also a way to highlight text, and there's virtual sticky notes as well. And you can export all those notes out to another document, either a Google Doc or a Word document, Pages document, something like that, to kind of collect all those notes and make them a little bit easier to read in a separate location other than the original source. So hopefully that gives Stampin' Tulip some ideas. If it was not quite what you're asking, Stampin' Tulip, maybe you can clarify a little bit.
Awesome. I just want to plug Bookshare there too, one of Understood's founding partners, and also it's funded by the government, basically free digital text-to-speech books for kids who qualify, so some sort of reading disability. do check them out if your child is struggling with reading or has diagnosis of some kind. Free books, and as Jamie said, all types of assistive technology. So Bookshare is a really great tool. Next question is from Lara. We got time for a few more. Lara has a third grader struggling with reading. Lara says non-reader, I think, is probably struggling with some reading issues. Interested in trying to help Lara's child with math word problems, just maybe reading those math word problems. Any thoughts there, Jamie?
Sure. If they're in third grade, you're probably dealing with some fairly basic word problems. Maybe addition, subtraction, maybe involving multiplication and division by third grade. So I would think that most of your basic text-to-speech tools will be able to read those word problems out loud. So that Lara's third grader and other children like that can have a little better understanding of what's being asked using that text-to-speech tool. If we have talking about some older kids where there might be more advanced math involved, there's a tool that is made by Text Help, which is the same company who makes Read and Write. It's called Equatio. It's another Chrome tool. And you can use the text-to-speech of Read and Write with math problems that are inside of Equatio. And that should do a little better job in terms of that advanced math and being able to read those word problems out loud. But I would think for Lara's child, third grade level, I think most of your basic text-to-speech tools should be able to handle those kind of elementary age word problems.
But Lara needs to have that for her child. She needs to have that text for those word problems in a digital format, right?
Yes, absolutely. So definitely needs to be in digital format for text-to-speech to work properly.
Okay, so maybe that's something that she can ask for. This is from Kiki, who's asking for a child with dyslexia who's struggling with written expression. There's 3 programs Kiki 2 is looking at: Grammarly, Co-Writer, Read and Write for Chrome. It sounds like they're all for Chrome. Is there one in particular that they should focus on, her child?
Yeah, I think that's hard for me to answer without knowing more about Kiki's child. Okay. Everything she mentioned, I think, works really well. Just keep in mind, Kiki, that if your child is using a Chromebook, which it sounds like it, I would start with the basics first. So for written expression, maybe if your child's using Google Docs, start with what's already there. So the built-in dictation inside of Google Docs. If you're unaware of that tool, you need to be using the Chrome web browser. So if you're using a Chromebook, that's what you're using anyway. If you're using a different desktop computer, like a Mac or a Windows computer, you do need to be using that Chrome web browser. And then inside the Google Docs, there's a drop-down menu called Tools, and you'll see one there called Voice Typing. And that's the built-in dictation tool. Works really well for dictation. And that's if your child is able to dictate and it's working, is comfortable using dictation and it's working accurately for him or her. I think you probably also, for written expression in general, would want to add a word prediction tool to the tool belt of that child. Co-Writer is a really good word prediction tool. There are others. But again, without knowing more about Kiki's child's specific difficulties, it's hard to point her in a direction in terms of specific tools.
Okay. This is a question from Miles' mom. He's got an 8-year-old in 3rd grade with dyslexia. The school needs help because apparently it sounds like the school does not know what to do to get started with AT. She's asking for top 3 things, AT things he should be using, her son should be using. I might reframe that question. Let's say you are a parent and your kid is in 3rd grade with dyslexia. School doesn't really know what to do with assistive technology. What do you tell the school? How should you go about that, Jamie?
Well, the first thing, of course, Andrew, would be to go to understood.org. That's a cheap plug. But it's just true because there's if you're just getting started with AT, there's lots of really easy to comprehend, easy to digest information on the website. But if you want to be more specific, If you have a third grader with dyslexia, the first thing I would try out and get your child using right away is some kind of text-to-speech tool. It could be the built-in text-to-speech of an iPad. It could be a text-to-speech tool on the Chromebook. Anything that is allowing that child to access text and to hear it out loud, especially with a third grader, maybe just identified with dyslexia. We really want to give them access to text because we want them to be able to participate in class just like all of their other classmates, access information that is on par with all of the classmates, and their intellectual level. And we have so much information that is digital these days that we really want to start with that text-to-speech early on. Because 9 times out of 10, a person with dyslexia is going to need to use text-to-speech their entire life. Even if the remediation comes along and they become better decoders, they're probably going to need a text-to-speech tool just to get through, the larger volumes of reading when they get much older. So that would be one. Maybe along with that, I would introduce something like Bookshare so that your child can read Harry Potter just like the rest of his or her classmates with a text-to-speech tool. Probably a dictation tool and a word prediction tool as well. So in terms of reading, you want that text-to-speech. In terms of writing, the two most basic assistive technology tools are dictation, where you're speaking your words and it's transcribing it on the screen, and word prediction, where you're typing, but you're still getting that spelling support in terms of the word prediction suggestions.
Awesome. I mean, I'm not plug Bookshare again. They are a nonprofit, and they do provide, I think, their services for free to schools. So that's a good thing to mention. That the schools can get it for the kids who need it and have those reading issues. We're almost about out of time. There were a couple questions though about, and I'm sorry I couldn't get to all of your guys' questions out there. We definitely ask those questions in u.org/community. Jamie, when he has a little bit more time, and other experts can go in there. We have a couple of assistive technology experts can go in and give you very specific answers. So if we didn't get to your question, we can definitely answer it there. There were a number of questions, though, that I want that were not so much about dyslexia or dysgraphia, but about the executive functioning issues, the organization that comes from dyslexia and dysgraphia. I wanted to throw that out to Jamie. Just going to bring up a hypothetical middle school because that's where it happens. You have a child with these executive functioning issues, organization. Can you give us some guidance on the tools that are out there for a number of the parents that asked about those?
Sure. So in terms of executive functioning, organization for writing, as Mom 1 mentioned a little bit earlier, inspiration is a really good tool for that, to organize your ideas and thoughts in terms of writing. There are also, if your child is not a visual kind of thinker, and would not benefit from graphic organizers, there are other things that you can use for organization writing. There's a resource called Write Well, which provides lots of writing templates in very linear format, not visual at all. So you might want to check that out as well. Another tool which is available across all platforms, which can help with things like writing, but also in terms of organizing notes and completing assignments on time, getting reminders for certain things you have to do throughout the day. And that tool is called Google Keep. I know, Angela, we've talked about that frequently on these chats. And Google Keep is a really easy way. It's a way to, I call it a virtual refrigerator door that you can stick sticky notes all over, except that it follows you around. So you can access it from your iPad or your Chromebook, or just from the web. Any web browser you can access it from. But it allows you to do things like create to-do lists with checkboxes, so you can check them off. You can set a reminder so that you get a reminder on when that assignment is due. You can, just like Google Docs, you can add collaborators to those little virtual sticky notes. So if your child is going to have difficulty receiving and acting on those reminders by themselves, you can have them add you as a collaborator to all the little sticky notes so that you'll get the reminders as well, and you can help your child kind of remember to do those certain things. So that's definitely one I would check out too for those executive functioning difficulties in terms of staying organized.
Yeah, I love the Google Keep because you can kind of, I mean, it's always great to have a checklist on a piece of paper, but you can share them, so that's nice. It's harder to get lost, right?
Yeah, and you can add visuals too. So you can add you can take a picture of something with your iPhone's camera, or import an image from somewhere else to make it more visual for those kids who do benefit from that visual reinforcement.
Yeah, man, technology has really done great things, I think, for kids with learning and attention issues, and I'm so appreciative, Jamie, that you're at sort of the forefront of that, really making a difference for these kids. Before we go, I do want to ask a specific thing for all the parents out there. We really want to know how you feel about these expert chats. We really want to know, are we serving you? Are we doing the right thing? Are we answering your questions? So we're going to paste a survey in there. Please do take a moment to answer it because we wanted these to be as useful as possible for parents out there. If you think something is wrong or you don't like it or you want something else offered, do add it in there. We're going to look at every one of those comments and really in that survey, and we're really going to try to see if we can serve parents the best way possible. And if you didn't get your question answered, and again, go to u.org/community, just copy and paste your question in there, and you can make sure to get it answered. So thanks so much, Jamie, for this great expert chat. Really here.
No problem. It's always a pleasure. Always enjoy it. So keep asking me to do them, Andrew.
Awesome. And thank you to the parents out there for taking your time out and listening to us. Have a great day, and wish the best for each of your children.